when you're buying stocks, there's usually an end game, but if you're buying cards, the end game could, now I've instructed my wife, I don't want anything in my casket. There's nothing I care so much about. It's going to be in my casket. But, so, I mean, there's some things that won't be sold until after my death. I'm sure I'll say, I just want to have them. So I'm a hobbyist. Adam, we're all afflicted in this way. And it's probably one of the best addictions you could have, because it's not socially unacceptable. It doesn't hurt anybody. It can even be financially beneficial, as you're pointing out, and I've experienced as well. So
that you were happier when you were closer to the cards. Can you expound on that at all?
When I started my company, it was me, myself, and I. Then I had another person or two or three or four or five, and all of a sudden it got bigger and bigger. And then at the peak, I had almost 200 employees, and I was a CEO. I don't want to be a CEO. I mean, I had to be. I owned the company. I was the boss, and I was the one making the decisions. I didn't have any problem with that. But you just don't have time to do the cards. I mean, after a while, I couldn't really go to shows because it was just too, and my family was getting, more at a point where, I went every weekend. I mean, not every weekend, but once a month I'd go to a show trip. And so I was keeping up, but it just, there'd be other guys doing a lot of the basic research instead of me. So, when I'm doing the podcast, I'm not doing a lot of homework. I mean, I lived it. That's why some of the stuff that you're covering in your modern era, I'm not as strong on that, because I didn't own the company anymore. I didn't live it as much. I mean, just enjoying it. For those years in the 70s and 80s and 90s, it was nonstop. And I love that. But then, this last few years, I wasn't kicked upstairs because I was the boss, but it just made sense for me to be the CEO. And so I had presidents under me that I couldn't undermine them and say, well, here's what you should do. If you're going to ask them to be the president and pay them to be the president, you got to trust their judgment. But they weren't my judgments, and they hadn't been collectors to the degree I had been. So, and that's a blessing and a curse. It's hard to delegate if you think you're the expert and the person you delegate to is not going to do it as well. The good thing on the Price Guide guys is that I hired a whole bunch of them. And, maybe at the beginning, I'm sure I was better than any one of them. But was I better than any two? Was I better than any three or any four? We had a bunch of really sharp guys. And so, but still, like I said, I quit. I got out of the day-to-day. Getting out of the
day-to-day of not having the cards with you isn't necessarily something that made you happy.
I never had a chance to look at my own cards. I could go to shows and case say, talk to dealers, see what was selling. And I pop in on some LCS action. That was fun, but they weren't my cards. And I wasn't buying cards because, I'd buy cards at the National for picturing, for type cards. Rich and I would go around and we'd buy a bunch of cards, but the cards weren't that expensive. We weren't buying huge cards. And so, now what I'm doing now, and my wife understands that, if we're watching something on TV that only requires one ear and one eye, I'll bring out a box of cards and it's something I haven't looked at in years. And there'll be some nuggets in there, and there'll be some stuff if it's not worth much, I'll put it in a box for Rich and for his synagogue show. And if it's at a certain level, I'll put it the ComC. If it's another certain level, I've got a bunch of stuff at BGS. I hope I'm not coming across negatively in my episodes that I'm waiting a really long time. And I put my name on it, and I can't, and I'm getting a good price, but I'm not. I'm waiting a really long time, and I've got another group I want to put in. I'm thinking I'm already, waiting, and then I've got another group, and this would be a third group still waiting for the first group. And I've done big submissions every year for them, but I'm still working off 2019 now. I'm waiting for that. So some of the cards I'd like to show you is like that Kobe card. I don't know when it's going to come out, and a bunch of others. I put in what I had my original submission from late 2019, and that's been in there for a year now. And then right after Kobe died, I thought, you know what, I probably need to pull out some of these less, a $20 Kobe card from a year ago could easily be a $200 card.
Easily.
And it could easily be a $2,000 card if it gets a 9.5 or 10 or something. When they're not the one per case inserts, but the ones that are the one per box or something like that. There's still some good cards, and they're pretty untouched. So I put them in, that was probably right before COVID. Well, then they shut down. PSA was shut down. I wouldn't have gone to them anyway, but PSA shut down. And so now I'm waiting for a second group. And then now I'm putting together another group to get them. And I'm thinking, maybe I need to, I don't know if that adds pressure to them.
I've only ever been a BGS guy. I don't know exactly why. I like the flips more.
Yeah, I do too.
I like the pricing. I think that where PSA upcharges you on higher dollar cards has always felt like something that's wrong to me. I don't think that they should have any doubt about their incentives, and I think they clearly do.
That was fully discussed when I was very involved when those decisions were made, and I don't know that I was adamant about that because I don't think I got a lot of opposition on that. But it's like you're leaving money on the table if you don't upcharge them. I said, wait a minute, what table? I mean, we need to get the cards. We need to be the trusted source for people that are actually grading cards. And I don't want that additional heartburn to think, well, yeah, but if I give them this really good card, it's going to. So we put it into the turnaround. If it's a good card, you're not going to want it sitting there for a long time. But now I've got some very valuable Kobe cards that are sitting there, and it'll probably be there for a year. Now, if I had money, I could put it in the bank and I could make 0.1%. I never calculate the value when I give them these cards because I'm going to pick them up. So they only need the value for the insurance. They don't need, like PSA maybe charges you more if it's a higher listed card, but I don't even want to think about the value because I have way, way more cards than that with them. In fact, I'm part of your problem because I generally make much larger submissions because I don't care. I'm just anything that, because I've got a bunch of stuff that's going to go on my wall. I'll redistribute my wall. I was realizing I don't have Kareem on my wall. And that's just because I didn't actually my wall will not, I can't show tall boys because they won't fit in the standard size slab. I was going to tell you who my starting five are.
Tell me.
My starting five is Wilt at center. I mean, he was so dominant and pretty unstoppable. And then you see how many assists he had. I saw him in his days when he never fouled out. He just was an unbelievable guy. Okay, obviously LeBron and MJ, they're in the starting five. And this is a little controversial, but I'm going to pick Kobe.
I love it.
And the reason is he'd be a 3-and-D guy, because I think he was a great defender. I just all the games I saw him with the Mavs, when he got into a shutdown mode, he was more trouble on the defensive end than in the offense. He took a lot of late shot clock awkward threes, but he made a surprising amount of them. And my fifth guy is a Big O. I actually met the Big O, and he is really big, and he could do almost whatever he wanted to. And he's another guy that had a poor supporting cast, and so he kind of nipped out Jerry West. But again, not necessarily 3-and-D, but what are you going to say when a guy gets a lot of rebounds, a great shooter, and a great passer in the days when assists were way stingier than Russell Westbrook? I'm enjoying ComC, but occasionally I mess up, and sometimes I sell stuff too cheap. But if it's price, it's like the buy it now thing. If it sits there for a while, and nobody nibbles at anything like it, then you just lower the price.
I sold a graded Wilt card for $3 when I meant to put $30 on it. So
I've done that too.